What can the county do about it? And are you talking about pickets outside of racetracks for slot machines?
We're good at what we do. We've won for 19 straight years. I don't think we've ever ticketed. Okay. What we are saying really, I believe this is at two levels. There's a court debate where I believe we will win, and then there's a debate for public opinion. All right, because it is a democracy, and how we will win is that there are various steps that have to be gone through. I mean, I think there's this story in today's Columbus Dispatch about where one of these racetracks is in a county fairground, and the county may not agree to allow it, and so there'll be, it may have to move. Here in Franklin County, we'll be looking at the options. As many of you who are local know, that this is just to say, I haven't had a conversation with her about it, but the head of the Franklin County Commissioners, Commissioner Paul Brooks, is passionately against bringing casinos and slot machines in. I have no doubt that there will be a variety of conversations and strategic discussions about the fact that we don't want an unfunded mandate in Central Ohio saying we got to do this and we have to bear the cost, so that the members of the Ohio General Assembly and the governor can avoid facing their responsibility to have adequate taxation.
But does the county have any standing to deny this?
Well, I think there are questions to be considered about how this impacts zoning. I think there are questions about what will happen with police protection in particular, and is it appropriate to move forward until those questions are answered. We'll keep raising each and every question about where this doesn't work, and the response will always be, our intention will always be, go back to the folks in the General Assembly, your elected representatives, go back to our governor and say this isn't working, and we can do something better. There is some indication that, this is only reports in the media, that perhaps even the governor and those who supported this want a quick legal decision. We'd like that. And a quick legal decision will shut this down just all that much sooner from our perspective.
How do you plan on mobilizing all the people against it?
We'll use the techniques we have used and the technology that continues to work on our side. We do a lot of stuff now by email. We are a world of blogs and Twitter, and we said there are 500,000 United Methodists. How many folks are actually churches members of the Ohio Council?
About 2 million.
The 2 million, that includes our 500,000. And we know that there are many other faith-based groups that are deeply concerned. Many folks in the evangelical Christian community that are not part of the Ohio Council churches necessarily. The Islamic community is passionately anti-gambling. We think this will be also. We believe we got a leg out. We have 3,350,000 folks who just voted no, and probably aren't real pleased that 72 people thought they could veto what they voted for.
Would you consider a petition drive to repeal the language, in other words, that's now in the Ohio Revised Code?
It certainly is an option. At this point, we believe there are other opportunities that will be much more timely and that we will prevail. Again, you may be thinking that I'm sounding naive, but I would just say to you, we have worked on this. I've been part of this for 19 straight years. I've lost track of the number of times we were told we couldn't win, how many times it wasn't going to happen. And yet, the fact remains, we stand before you, there are no slot machines operating in this state, and I'm convinced they aren't going to operate.
Although it's part of the Constitution right now, it does allow bingo. There's a lot of Ohioans out there that feel there's no difference between allowing bingo at churches and this slot plan. Gambling's gambling. How do you respond to that?
At a couple of levels, and I'm happy to answer. It's a question and conversation that's been around for a long time. One of the reasons that we now use the term predatory gambling repeatedly is to help clarify and implicitly respond to your question. As a United Methodist, I'm part of a faith tradition that's opposed to all gambling. At the same time, we recognize that there are different degrees of intensity and harm done by different styles of gambling. And so this right now, and most of the debates that I've been part of, have been about predatory gambling. It's the styles of gambling that tend to be lose the majority of the money, in the wagers. And so when the state of Ohio says that it wants to get further into the gambling business, it is truly a predatory activity. And again, there is this simple math. The folks will have to lose $2 billion out of their pockets for the state to be able to get $933 million, for revenue. It's just bad math.
How does the Constitution just define this notion of proceeds? Are the license fees proceeds? Can the Lottery Commission take anything for administration and so on?
I don't have the language in front of me. There's certainly, the commission can use some money to cover its costs. They have up until this point. And I think they currently, I believe, talk about proceeds being what's left after the costs are taken out. What's very interesting now is, are they actually going to try to argue that giving 50% to the racetracks was a cost to operate slot machines?
I guess I'm just wondering because, the proceeds are talked about, but the license fees are what's going into the budget.
Right.
And then the proceeds will be on what, presumably?
Right.
Basically, they always use the term gross profits after they pay the winners. So after they pay the winners, that's the gross profits. It doesn't say anything about paying 50% to an agent.
Right.
We pay very little for lottery tickets to the people who sell those. So it's going to be a hard sell, it seems to me, to say that 50% of the gross profits should go to a group outside of the education.
But does a convenience store make profits on selling lottery tickets?
They do, but it's a very small amount. You're not talking 50% of the revenue.
Right. In fact, it's that line of logic that you're pursuing that we think is what is going to carry the day on this part when we get into court. It is such a small amount. And then also, there isn't a lot of distinction between the piece of equipment that's used right now to play Keno and the piece of equipment that will be used for a video slot machine. They're very similar. And so it's going to be, we believe, impossible for the state legislature to argue in court that they had to give this enormous extra amount of money to racetracks to use to make money for public education, equipment that's almost identical to what's now being used for Keno. The machines are just programmed. There may be some modest differences, but it's basically the same unit. And so they're going to have, we believe, an impossible argument. And the reason it's impossible to be convincing in the argument is because we all know that's not what they were doing. In other words, we all know this was a deal to help save racetracks. This was a deal where some people become enormous winners on gambling profits. And those winners aren't the folks in the state, it's the folks in the racetracks. And so sometimes, most of the time, Abraham Lincoln said you fool all the people some of the time, some of the people all the time, but you can't fool all the people all the time. We're counting on the last part of that. We think this is one of those moments where it's just not going to be possible to fool the citizens of the state of Ohio. We believe the courts will stand up for what's right. And we also just believe that that whole contest for public opinion that we're winning right now and will continue, this isn't going to